File 001. The interview. Location: Bellamy Estate, Charleston, South Carolina. Dr. Adrian Thorne. They say those who can't do, teach, and those who can't teach, pursue a PhD in comparative semiotics and dead languages. I used to laugh at that. Now, I've stopped laughing, especially since the grant money dried up with the new administration, and my last university contract ended with a best of luck and a handshake that smelled like someone else's cologne. So when a mutual connection, a rare bookseller I occasionally helped out by authenticating old works, mentioned a private client looking for someone with my peculiar qualifications, I didn't ask too many questions. Rent was overdue. Again. That's how I ended up at the Bellamy Estate just past dusk. The car ride had taken me through iron gates that creaked with wealth and into the kind of neighborhood that has names instead of street numbers. The house was exactly what you'd expect from an old Charleston family. Ivy, gas lanterns, windows like watching eyes. Quiet in the kind of way that makes you feel like you're not supposed to be there. The housekeeper led me to a private library that could have passed for a museum exhibit. The room was cathedral high, lined with glass-fronted shelves, Persian rugs, and ancient dust. Gas sconces hissed against the gloom, pushing back shadows but never banishing them entirely. She was already there, standing by the hearth in a fitted charcoal blazer, arms folded. High cheekbones, hair pinned back with precision. She gave off the exact energy of someone who never needed to raise her voice to get what she wanted. "You'll have 1 hour," she said, skipping introductions. "The book doesn't leave this room. You won't be left alone with it. You may take notes, but I will retain them. If you satisfy my curiosity, I'll pay $500. If you impress me, we'll talk again." No handshake, no smile, just that. She turned to a locked display case and withdrew a book that looked like it had been rescued from a fire and kissed by a tomb. The leather was cracked and soft, the corners wrapped in bronze. No markings, no title. At the center of the front cover was a crystal, oval and nearly flush with the surface, just enough to catch the light. It glowed faintly beneath the leather, a soft shimmer of teal gold like sunlight trapped in seawater. She placed it on the desk in front of me, then stepped back to observe. "I'll be here," she said. "Begin when ready, Dr. Thorne." I leaned in, studying the book. It didn't look electronic, not modern, but something about it made the hairs on my arm rise. Decorative, I told myself, symbolic. But the closer I got, the more I felt a low hum pressing at the edge of perception, like the moment before a speaker crackles to life. I hovered my hand above it. Just nerves, dust, nonsense. Still, I hesitated longer than I'd like to admit. So she knew my name. Not surprising. What was surprising was the moment I touched the cover. The crystal was warm, not ambient room warm, body warm. As my fingers made contact, the room seemed to still. The low hiss of gaslight dulled, and a faint pressure, like being underwater, pressed gently against my ears. I drew a breath and turned to the first page. It was gibberish. Spiraling glyphs, like a hybrid of Proto-Coptic and early Aramaic, but collapsed in ways that made no linguistic sense. A dead script, or invented. But there, beneath it all, I saw a pattern, a word, then two. And suddenly I understood something I hadn't seconds before. I blinked. The light felt different, more golden, more directional. Dust in the air took on a shape, an angle, like the room itself was observing me back. The paper beneath my hand felt like parchment, but held a temperature just above cool. Symbols stirred faintly as if on the verge of moving. I whispered aloud. "Loss defines what memory cannot keep." The words weren't just a translation. They were personal. Like the book knew what would anchor itself in my mind. I looked away, then back, to see if the glyphs had changed. They hadn't. And yet, they had. The shapes made sense now, not because they were legible, but because something in me had adapted, reframed, aligned. More glyphs began to shift, not on the page, but in my head, as if something had realigned in my vision. I looked down. The page was the same, but now the symbols meant something. Shapes had weight. Diagrams breathed. Touching certain corners of the page made symbols rise, like braille under pressure, heat lifting ink. The scent of the room had changed. Less old paper, more ozone. I blinked, rubbed my temples, even stood briefly, and walked to the shelves before returning. The page hadn't moved. The light hadn't changed. But I had. Every time I looked back, the same symbols seemed just a little more familiar, like a word you nearly remember but can't place. There was a faint vibration under my wrist now, as if the cover beneath the page was pulsing with a second heartbeat. "Did you read it?" she asked quietly. "No," I said. "I think it read me." I ran my fingertips along the page again. The edges buzzed ever so faintly. My vision pulsed with each breath, like I was sinking to something not entirely mine. One of the symbols pulsed beneath my touch. I pressed it. The crystal flared, teal first, then gold. For a second, the whole room pulled inward, like the moment before a migraine or the aftershock of lightning. The journal burned warm beneath my hand. A golden glyph appeared across the page in a completely new script, mechanical, sharp-edged, purposeful. She stepped forward, her arms still folded. "That's new," she said, no surprise in her voice, just confirmation. "You've tried this before. With others, you're the first to have gotten so far." I sat back slowly. The sensation was fading from my fingers, but not from my head. I felt opened, like the space between thought and language had been pried apart. "What is this?" She ignored the question. She stepped to the case, flipped the journal closed, and returned it to its shelf as carefully as a bomb technician disarming an unstable device. Then she turned to me and, at last, offered a name. "I suppose introductions are in order. I'm Marion Bellamy." The Bellamy name hit with weight. I'd seen it on buildings, endowments, court cases, and here she was, wearing it like a tailored suit. "I imagine you have questions," she said. I did. I had too many. She gestured toward the door. "But I have other matters this evening. For now, just one." She gave me the faintest smile, like she already knew the answer. "How would you like a job? I'll expect your call tomorrow." I left the estate under a sky the color of tarnished brass. My rideshare hadn't moved from where it idled at the curb, and the driver didn't say a word when I climbed in. Just gave me a glance in the mirror and turned the radio down. I stared out the window the entire ride home, watching the glow of gas lamps give way to the harsher geometry of streetlights. My fingers still tingled, like I'd held something too hot for too long, and only now realized it had burned me. What had I just seen? No, not seen. Touched. Understood. The words had bent around me, or I'd bent around them. I wasn't sure which was worse, but beneath the confusion and disbelief, there was something else. Excitement. Not academic, not professional. The kind of excitement that feels like stepping to the edge of something vast. Something that sees you back. I kept turning over the phrase in my mind. Loss defines what memory cannot keep. It echoed like something half-remembered from a dream or a funeral. Had the book given that to me, or had it pulled it from somewhere inside me? That was the part I couldn't stop thinking about. If it could respond to me, to my thoughts, then what else could it do? And what else might it show me if I kept going? And I wasn't walking away from it. Not yet. End of journal entry.
Recovered log fragment, core memory relay, archive node. 001, unstable source, processing request. Designate Thorne, Adrian, unbound. Cognitive pattern, acceptable. Entry log match, fragment recognized. Protocol 7. Matching historical index, corrupted. Matching librarian soul core, unstable. Matching integrity status, 7% codex of the custodian verified. Custodian pattern match detected. Partial relay authority restored. Somewhere beneath the shifting grids of a modern city, below the traffic noise, the halogen buzz, the clatter of feet and commerce, a forgotten hall stirred. Dust curled from iron vents. Mechanical veins pulsed once, faintly. Along the outer rim of a long dormant relay ring, cracked stones lit with a pale teal glow. Symbols flickered across the wall, then stuttered, glitching back to dark. A whir, a pulse, then gold. The ancient seal of the custodian shimmered across the outer ring, seen for the first time in generations. A distant, ethereal voice. Archive loading. End of file.